The movie opens with a middle-aged man named John Francis Walker breaking the fourth wall to address a girl off camera. He ensures that the camera records the video message and introduces himself. The girl repeatedly interrupts him, urging him to focus on a more positive future, but he persists, taking us back to his childhood in the year 1964 through a flashback. In the flashback, we see an adolescent Frank Walker entering the New York World's Fair with a jetpack prototype that he hopes will win him the $50 prize. He presents his invention to the judges, including a man named David Nix, and explains how it works. While waiting for the verdict, Frank is approached by a young British girl named Athena, who asks him if he made the jetpack himself, to which he responds affirmatively. The judge asks Frank if the jetpack can actually fly, but he admits his failed attempt as seen in a memory, resulting in the rejection of his entry. Despite this, Frank believes that his invention can inspire people to create a better world. As Frank recollects his painful conversation with his disapproving father on a bench outside, Athena appears beside him and invites him to follow her covertly. She gives him a small gold pin with a blue cover and a red T emblem, and leads him into Walt Disney's It's a Small World attraction. Frank boards a boat into a tunnel filled with attractions, and the pin gets scanned by a laser. He finds himself in an unfamiliar setting, and a robotic voice instructs him to disembark the boat and enter a metallic box. The voice commands him to don a helmet, leaving Frank confused. While struggling to maintain his balance, Frank falls and is suddenly transported to Tomorrowland, a dazzling futuristic cityscape filled with flying cars. He spots Athena cruising by, but startles when a group of robots cause him to lose his footing and topple onto a platform below him, spilling the jetpack bag from his bag. The robots fix Frank's jetpack, and just in time to explore the secretive domain, he dons his helmet and goggles and glides over the terrain until he crash lands in front of Athena. Despite Frank's bleak outlook on life in Tomorrowland, the camera pans to Casey Newton, a blonde teenager and self-described optimist, who expresses her desire to explore space in 2009. In another moment in her past, Casey expertly uses her drone to scan and disable the security cameras at the NASA launch platform demolition site in Florida, sabotaging the planned demolition undetected. Athena watches Casey closely from her car parked outside the site, where she collects a DNA sample from Casey's bike using a device holding a pin similar to the one given to Frank. Later, Casey's little brother Nathan catches her sneaking into the house, suspecting her of trying to save their father's job. The next day, when Eddie, their NASA engineer father, receives a call about the damaged cranes at the site being replaced and hints at Casey's involvement, she drops off Nate's lunch and informs him that she's leaving for school. Although Eddie accepts the inevitability of losing his job, Casey rekindles his hope by recalling a story about two wolves representing despair and hope, with the one being fed emerging victorious. Casey attends classes where her teachers paint a bleak picture of a dystopian future, but she chooses to remain optimistic. At night, she uses her drone to cause more disruptions on the site, but is caught by the police and detained. After being released on bail, she goes to retrieve her belongings and notices a strange handcuffed man smiling at her. Among her things, she finds a pin that doesn't belong to her. She touches the pin and is suddenly transported to a wheat field where she sees the beautiful Tomorrowland cityscape in the distance. When she returns to the police station, Casey hits her head on a beam. Her father shows up, disappointed and angry, and scolds her during the car ride home for breaching Homeland Security. Despite this, Casey urges him to touch the pin and see for himself. Although nothing happens, it still seems to transport her. Her father confiscates the pin, assuming her behavior is the result of drugs or teenage rebellion. However, Casey sneaks into his room to retrieve the pin and is transported back to the wheat field, affirming the pin's authenticity. When she tries to pass through an invisible barrier, she falls back into her house, waking her father. She hides and leaves on her bike, touching the pin again to ensure its powers. Casey finds herself transported to Tomorrowland, where she sees people flying on jetpacks and landing safely with the help of safety suits. Casey is awestruck by the sight of flying cars and stops to admire the wonders before entering the Tesla station, where she sees hovering trains passing above and below her. A lady dressed in red invites her aboard the hover rail, and Casey assumes that she is visible in this world. From the window, she sees divers in floating swimming pools diving with finesse as the train makes its way to spaceport. The transparent train provides her with a view of technological marvels, including futuristic helicopters. As the train pulls into the spaceport station, Casey exits in wonder and watches as space rockets launch from their stations. The astronaut, her co-passenger, invites her aboard, but to her dismay, the battery on the pin begins to run out, and she is suddenly transported back to the lake in her own time. Frustrated, Casey returns home and wakes Nate to ask for their father's computer password to investigate the mysterious pin. Together, they discover a Houston memorabilia shop linked to it. Casey enlists Nate to cover for her and shares her amazing journey with him in exchange. The next day, she boards a bus and sketches the image of Tomorrowland. While Nate retrieves his bike from the garage, Athena, disguised as a Girl Scout, approaches him, asking about Casey's whereabouts. At first, Nate tries to mislead her, but he ultimately reveals the malfunctioning pin and Casey's quest to obtain another one, realizing she's from the future. Casey enters Blast from the Past, the memorabilia shop. She catches the attention of the owner, who is watching an atomic explosion on TV. When she asks about the pin, the owner summons her quirky husband, who interrogates Casey about the pin's source. However, when they refuse to share any information unless she does the same, Casey decides to leave. As she's leaving, Hugo captures Casey's attention by validating her experience. He tells her about a place where the world's greatest minds collaborate to bring their wildest imaginations to life, free from the limitations of the world. He reveals that this place could only be accessed through the pin, like the one she possesses, and it was rumored to be on the brink of going public before something went awry, though he refuses to disclose it. He offers Casey money to reveal who she got the pin before the two brandish their guns. Casey tries to escape, but they shoot at her, wounding her. Her attempt to hide fails, and a metallic bowl smashes through the window, encasing the owners in a ticking time bomb of galactic blue energy. Athena arrives holding an ultra-modern gun, urging Casey to escape before the sphere bursts open. However, Casey's hand is trapped, and Athena urges her to take her hand and flee as soon as it is free. With Casey's assistance, they triumph over the owners, who self-destruct, blowing the shop apart. Athena implores Casey to leave with her before they are discovered and shattered the window of a parked car to commandeer it, leaving Casey bewildered as to how Athena knows her name. In the car, Athena reveals that the proprietors were audio animatronics, marking Casey for extermination, and she's the one who gave her the pin. Perplexed by Athena's juvenile appearance and the preceding events, Casey demands answers. Before Athena can explain, her speech becomes distorted, and an automated voice informs her of self-destruction in 16 seconds. Her words metamorphose into Japanese, but she temporarily mends herself. She stops the car, leaps out, and flees, with Athena in pursuit, getting struck by a passing vehicle that Casey takes off with when the driver halts to check on Athena. Athena catches up to Casey, breaking through the back window to reach the passenger seat. She explains her purpose and the significance of the pin, urging Casey to act fast to avoid getting caught. Reluctantly, Casey agrees to help Athena. Back at Blast from the Past, law enforcement officials are preparing to investigate the scene when men claiming to be from the Secret Service take control of the case. When the deputy sees the robotic head of the wife, he demands answers from Dave, who eliminates the officers. Dave instructs his team to inform Governor Nix that they have located the little girl. Meanwhile, Athena takes Casey to meet Frank Walter in Pittsfield, New York, who happens to be the now adult. Athena reveals that she is an animatronic designed to recruit individuals perfect for the utopian society. Casey leaves her father a message informing him of her safety. The following morning, Athena convinces Casey to let her drive and insists Casey is as special as the person they are about to meet. A flashback illustrates a tender moment between Athena and a young Frank while Casey dozes off. Casey is awoken when Athena drops her off outside Frank's house. She walks through the driveway and approaches his sizable house, but Frank's dog chases her off. She soon realizes it's only a hologram and returns to his doorstep, showing him the pin through his door camera, telling him that Athena abandoned her there. Frank, a reclusive and jaded man, refuses to take Casey to Tomorrowland, explaining that the world she saw was a marketing ploy designed to convince people that they are extraordinary. Casey, undeterred, sets his tractor on fire to lure him out and locks him outside while she rummages through his belongings. She discovers a recording of Athena and Frank, which leads her to a room with numerous screens broadcasting live feeds of world events and a probability counter marking the end of the world. When Frank returns, Casey bombards him with questions, and he reveals that he was exiled from Tomorrowland years ago, with all portals since sealed. Casey deduces that his probability counter resulted in his banishment, but she refutes his claim that the future is doomed and asserts that people hold the power over their destiny, subsequently reducing the probability on the counter. Amazed, Frank ponders her identity when the alarm goes off, and he quickly hides his possessions. The automated assassins appear, accusing Frank of harboring a fugitive and giving him an ultimatum to surrender Casey or suffer the consequences. Frank devises a plan to flee, killing several assassins in the process and taking refuge in the security room, and takes along an Edison tube. When Dave intercepts them, Casey clobbers him with a baseball bat, and they escape by jumping into the bathtub and landing in a lake. Once safe, Casey looks for and finds the cap her father gave her. Frank's bike is found in the woods, and Athena pulls up in a car and offers them a ride. Frank accuses Athena of his downfall and warns Casey of her deceptive and robotic nature, but agrees to help them reach Tomorrowland. They arrive at Frank's secret bunker, where Athena sets the teleportation device for the Eiffel Tower, revealing that she too was exiled from Tomorrowland, but that Casey's optimism may be the key to saving the future. They are teleported to the top of the Eiffel Tower, and Frank tasks Casey with determining the biological nature of a French security personnel using a device intended to disable human adversaries. They enter another room where Frank elaborates on the history of the tower's founders: Gustave Eiffel, Jules Verne, Nikola Tesla, and Thomas Edison, who established Plus Ultra, a group of forward-thinking futurists, and created a parallel dimension known as Tomorrowland. Using the Edison tube and pressing the horn of a phonograph, Frank activates the Spectacle, a rocket hidden beneath the Eiffel Tower that takes off into space. As the assassins pursue them, they get into the rocket and speed away, evading capture. The rocket's ascent to space leaves Parisians in awe, capturing the moment on their phones. The trio propel the rocket to Tomorrowland through another dimension, but it appears desolate and abandoned, not at all what Casey had envisioned. Frank senses imminent danger and asks Athena to hide an explosive device. Shortly after, Governor David Nix, the judge from 1964, arrives in a fleet of airborne vehicles and expresses his displeasure at the rocket launch's disruption. David introduces himself to Casey and demands to know why the exiled Frank has returned. Frank encourages Casey to be herself and explains to David that she could change the world's future, and he intends to prove it. Leading them to a tower, David shows them a machine that uses tachyon particles, surpassing the speed of light. David is impressed by Casey's understanding of the device's mechanics and informs her of Frank's creation, predicting the end of the world. Frank challenges David to let them prove their ability to avert the crisis and asks Casey to choose a location anywhere on Earth. When Casey selects Cape Canaveral, they set off towards their destination, with Casey at the helm, shocked by the machine's ability to look back and forward in time. Heartbroken by the end of the world in just 58 days, she refuses to accept this fate, leading everyone to witness a temporary alteration in the future. David remains skeptical and orders the trio's deportation. Faced with the despair of what lies ahead, Casey realizes that the tachyon machine's warnings could be self-fulfilling, fueled by negative thoughts that create the bleak future they saw. Together, they try to persuade David, but he remains stubborn and offers them a chance to spend their remaining days on a desolate island. They glimpse through a portal, and Frank deduces that Davis is behind it all. David admits projecting images of the apocalypse to humanity as a warning to prevent it, but their apathy caused them to accept their doomed fate. Believing that they had given up, David relinquished hope and let the apocalypse run its course. Not giving up, Frank deactivates David's wrist device, causing a fight to ensue. Athena's attempt to arm the bomb is impeded by a colossal robot, prompting Casey to climb onto the platform while Athena battles two robots. As Casey works to arm the bomb, David and Frank's struggle causes the platform to collapse, and the portal shuts down. In the chaos, Casey finds the bomb, which is a minute away from detonation. Unable to stop it, Athena and Casey decide to throw it onto the island and reopen the portal, urging Frank to make a swift exit. While escaping through the portal, David's legs get ensnared by a falling beam. In a moment of clairvoyance, Athena intervenes and jumps in between David and Frank. Her fatal blow shuts down her system, but she lets Frank see her humanity before asking him to use her self-destruct sequence to obliterate the machine. Frank destroys the machine and David dies under its wreckage. Frank follows Casey's lead to save the world. Using the portal, she teleports to the present day and rallies her father and brother as well. Together, they design a new set of animatronic recruitment agents who set out with identical pins to inspire new dreamers and thinkers from all over the world to join them in Tomorrowland. Want more such fantastical videos? Share your love in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe now.